Okay. Okay.
And then oh, is it a clicker? Yeah, for
Oh, wow.
transitioning.
Is it
So
nice?
you guys can see.
All right, so looks like everyone is here. We've got all of our presenters, all of our judges, all of our teachers, parents, friends, and family. So welcome, everyone. Good morning. My name is Rita Blake. I am the manager of education here at the California Nanosystems Institute at UCLA, aka CNSI. The Nanovation program is something that we are immensely proud of because it is a thing that really brings together so many parts of our institute and what we think is important and what makes it great, because it brings together rigorous research and learning about nanoscience and an understanding of nanoscience, but then also connects it to business and to the real world, because it's wonderful to invent anything, of course, but it's especially wonderful when you can get it out there into the real world and make it something that actually impacts people and makes it something that people want to buy. So it's an experience that not a lot of people get to have, up to and including faculty. I mean, this is a thing that even our graduate student mentors, especially in the first year, really had to learn just before and even during their tenure as being mentors for all the students. So it's an enriching experience, I think, both for the students on our end who are mentors, and obviously the students who are participating today. And again, something that is exceedingly rare, and especially rare for students of a younger age, because there's also plenty of business competitions out there, but not that many that really ask students to work with high technology. So we're extremely proud and extremely excited to see what everyone is going to be doing today. I kind of got to have the brief sneak peek of all of the presentations, and I have to say I am incredibly impressed. So I really look forward to seeing how everyone's actually going to present it today. So just to give you a brief rundown of what's going to go on. So right now we're just doing a little bit of a welcome. We've got some people to thank and some judges to introduce, so we're going to be doing that shortly. Then we're going to go right into our pitches. So we're going to have 11 companies present today. So we're going to do the first 5. We'll take a brief intermission, and then we'll come back, and then we'll do the concluding 6. After the pitches are done, we're going to have a nice lunchtime for everyone to relax and de-stress. And we'll also have a photo booth that you probably noticed was being set up outside, so another fun opportunity for you guys to relax, take some pictures, and just, you know, enjoy your time. And meanwhile, the judges are going to be tallying their scores in the other room. And then around 1:40, we'll all come back here together and we'll announce some awards and give some thanks, and then everyone will be sent on their merry way. But it's going to be a great day, so I'm really looking forward. So we have a lot of people to thank to make this competition happen. It really takes an army. And first, actually, I'll have to thank our 22 UCLA graduate student mentors who all gave their time to help. I mean, 22 people, that's a lot of people. I mean, we're extremely fortunate to have such a dedicated group of graduate students that work with us on all sorts of projects, this being just one of them. So, and I see some mentors here, actually. Do you guys want to just briefly stand so we can just acknowledge you exactly? Yay! And I'm sure many more are watching on the live stream. So mentors, of course, we have to thank. We had to thank our judges, and we'll get to introduce them specifically. But we also, of course, need to thank our sponsors, because it also takes money to run things. So first, of course, we have to thank our home institute, the California Nanosystems Institute, and Sonia Luna in particular for supporting us. We also owe a big thank you to environmental research advocates, and specifically Denise Avchen, who not only was a big sponsor of the prizes and the photo booth outside, but also was one of the people who helped to actually conceive of this entire competition in the first place. So it would likely not exist without her and without ERA, so we have to thank them as well. We also need to thank the UCLA Anderson School of Management because this last quarter we got to, and this quarter, we got to run a class with Professor George Abe called Entrepreneurship for Science, Medicine, and Technology, which some of our mentors got to take. So it really helped to give them a much deeper understanding of, again, the business side of tech entrepreneurship, which is really hard to learn unless you're just actively doing it. So we have to thank Anderson, and we also have to thank Professor George Abe, who also was here during the kickoff meeting and working with the teachers and giving them some guidance. So we have to thank them as well. And we also have two additional sponsors for this year for our competition, one of whom is Fresh Corn Grill, which I also have to kind of personally love and thank because the teachers will know them very well because whenever we do our teacher training workshops, they provide our delicious lunches. And whenever we do our mentor meetings, they also provide the delicious lunches. So we have to thank Fresh Corn Grill for really just kind of stepping up and helping this competition happen as well. And also, yes, let's give them a hand. And also ASML, which is a very wonderful semiconductor materials company that we work with on a variety of projects and with our technology centers. So it's really great to have another heavy technology-oriented sponsor, and we hope to get more of them in the future. But we definitely have to thank ASML for their support. So let's give them a round of applause too. So now we get to have a minute to introduce our judges, all of whom are sitting in our judges row. So I'll bring their names up one by one, and I'll just ask them to stand up and briefly just give a couple of remarks about their connection to tech and entrepreneurship. So first, we have Dr. Sarah Tolbert.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. So my name is Sarah Tolbert. I'm a professor in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry here at UCLA and also in the Department of Material Science and Engineering. Okay, I can step where everyone can see me. And I'm also the faculty director of the education program here at the CNSI. And it is a pleasure to be a part of this program. Within our education program at CNSI, we have a lot of really wonderful opportunities for science outreach in classrooms and public science outreach. But this is our only opportunity that melds science and entrepreneurship. And as somebody who, in my 20-something year as a professor, am for the first time involved with starting a company, I can tell you that they don't teach us this stuff in school. And they don't teach us this stuff when we become a professor. And so the fact that you are getting to learn this stuff now as junior high and high school students will give you an incredible advantage when you go out into the world. Because I spend a lot of time doing science for the beauty of science. And then what I realized is that when you combine science with entrepreneurship, there are many, many, many more constraints on what is possible. And something that seems like a great idea can be a terrible idea for a practical product. And starting to learn that early, what are the constraints of real products, will allow you to much faster make an impact on our society. So I'm super excited to be a judge, although I've been involved with this from the beginning and planned the last one. I planned the last one to conflict with a NSF site review. So this is my first opportunity to actually be a judge for this competition. And don't ask, this is the story of my life. I'm doing too many things. Anyway, it's a pleasure to be one of your judges and get to hear how all those pre-proposals turned into full proposals, and to see you guys get to learn something about real practical entrepreneurship.
Next we have Sonia Luna, our executive director here at CNSI.
I want to thank you all. Hi. I want to thank you all for being here today and all the hard work that you've put into the presentations. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Short and sweet. Next, we have Brian Benson, our Director of Entrepreneurship and Commercialization here at CNSI.
Hi, so I'm Brian Benson. I actually run a startup incubator that's housed here at CNSI. It's called Magnify. We support about 21 companies, so kind of the next iteration and phase is companies need a home, and so we house companies here, not only inspire them through programs like this, but we also give them a place to live and grow and then bring in other resources. So again, I think as Rita mentioned and everybody's mentioned today, this is a huge opportunity. Companies that we're seeing at the later stages, they're getting funding and they have no idea how to use it. They're getting funding and they don't even know how they got it. And so this is a great opportunity for you to really understand at the early stage, just start thinking about it in the back of your mind. And so once it comes up, you can really capitalize on those opportunities, because a lot of these technologies, it's about being a fast mover. Startups is about being a fast mover, making quick decisions, and trusting your instincts. And I think through programs like this, you get a comfort level that you wouldn't get anywhere else. It's harder to be comfortable when you've gone 40 years of your life not knowing a field and trying to get into it for the first time. Little cumbersome. But when you're younger and you're hungrier, it's just a great time to kind of learn this. So kudos to you guys and great work so far, and looking forward to judging you as hard as I possibly can.
Next, we have Howard Koh, who is a principal at Morpheus Ventures.
I guess I dropped the other mic. My name is Howard Koh. I'm with Morpheus Ventures. We're actually a venture capital firm. We typically do Series C, Series A, Series B investments. We invest in between 1 to 7 million per company, our initial check size. So that gives you kind of an idea of kind of what we typically invest in check size-wise. We've invested in companies from neuro-robotic networks to ground drone delivery with Starship to Hyperloop. So we invested in prior funds. Skype, for example, was one of our first investments. That sold pretty well, everybody. We sold DeepMind to Google for about $500 million. We sold Climate Corp to Monsanto for about $1 billion. So I guess we are the start of the nexus for that entrepreneurship and technology. When we get involved, we typically are probably just one stage after kind of Brian there, but still really, really early. I mean, for Skype, for example, it was literally 2 guys. It was the 2 founders at the time. They were in flip-flops. Nicholas and Giannis, I think they're both billionaires now, but back then it was literally 2 guys in flip-flops coming into the office. So we do see a lot of this stuff at the earliest stages. A lot of the companies that we are funding now are entrepreneurs who are, 18, 19, 20, mid-20s, right? And to some extent, people are starting younger and younger and younger. I'll tell you this. I never knew what venture capital or startups were when I graduated high school. Not a clue, right? And I think this is a great program to really give you guys a really early look kind of at what this is, and it really gives you a jump start. And look, I literally looked at a company right now with a 16-year-old prodigy, high school dropout. Now I don't want anybody to do high school dropouts. The guy was literally teaching semiconductors to a group of professors at Stanford, right? And we were looking at doing a multi-million-dollar investment into him, right? At this stage. So that gives you a bit of an idea of kind of how early people are starting these days. So I think kudos to you guys to be participatory in this program.
And last, but certainly not least, we have Denise Avchen, who is the Executive Director and co-founder of Environmental Research Advocates.
Hi. I'm just thrilled to be here today. Your energy is contagious. This is one of my favorite days of the year. And no pressure presenting in front of Howard there. I would be scared. But you guys, when you think about it, how many people your age in high school or middle school, but certainly most of you, I think all of you are high school students, even know what a patent is or how to do this. I mean, maybe you watch Shark Tank once in a while, but really the getting on your feet and doing something like this and presenting in front of a group of judges in a scary environment and VC person. You know, it's an opportunity that people twice your age would love to have, to just get on the feet, get their chops together, and present their dream. And life is creativity. No matter what field you're in, it's creative. And science is fun, and science is creative. And what you're doing today is showing that you can take something from just a concept, from an idea, from a dream, and turn it into something. And this gives you a chance with very little pressure, except from us, to express that. And so I am greatly honored to be part of this wonderful group at CNSI, Rita and Elaine and Sonia, and Sarah and everybody, because their raison d'etre is you, and Ja over there, who was the director here for education. But it's all about you guys and giving you an opportunity. Don't be scared, be nervous of it in a good way, but you're going to do great, and we're here to support you in any way we can, and can't wait to see what you have to say. So thank you, and let's get going.
So for those of you who are friends and family, or those of you watching from afar, just to remind you of, I guess, the stakes of the competition. So the first prize team is going to win $2,000 in classroom supplies. Our second place team will get $1,000. Our third place team will get $500. And every team is going to get at least $100 in supplies and a finalist trophy. Because you guys all worked so hard just to get to this point. So even if you don't win first, second, or third, you've won so much valuable experience, and you've won something that's much, much greater than, you know, some amount of money is going to give you. So you're all going to be awesome. So just to remind you guys of the parameters of what's going to happen. So you guys will have 5 minutes to pitch. So if you guys look behind you, you will see a screen that is set to 5 minutes. So you'll have a timer that can show you how you guys are doing. At 5 minutes, you will see that screen flash, and you're going to hear a little sound from me, which means that that is your time. So after 5 minutes, we'll have about 5 minutes for Q&A with our judges. And one more just quick reminder for both our presenters and our judges, if you guys can speak into the mic, that will be really, really helpful, because again, we are live streaming this, so if you don't speak into the mic, then we can't hear you. And also, it's helpful for people in the audience to be able to hear you. So with all of that said, let's go into our competition. So our first company to present today is Nano Solutions. So company one.
Good morning, I'm Christy Pineda.
I'm JC O'Diver.
I'm Carla Gomez.
I'm Lydia Chong.
I'm Edward Bush.
And today we're going to be talking about how we can use ferrofluids so that this does not happen. And we actually spent time at the UCLA lab developing a solution that can prevent spills altogether. We know too well the damage that oil spills can cause. They are detrimental to the environment, and I cannot emphasize that enough. Most people don't know that the industry does not do anything to prevent this from happening. Rather, instead, currently in the market, there are only methods that do not prevent the spills. Instead, they only address the problem after the damage has already been done.
On average, oil industries pay up to $6.8 billion to clean oil spills. However, the current cleaning methods don't solve the problem. They can only contain oil spills through booms, which only prevents an oil spill to spread, and conceal them through chemical dispersants, which only pushes the oil down into the ocean and just simply ignite them and just burn the oil. By ignoring and prolonging this problem, it creates a great toll on the environment and also harms a company's public relations. With so much money being spent, $6.8 billion and a maximum of $62 billion, there should be a more efficient way to solve these problems.
In order to prevent these problems from ever happening in the first place, we decided on that our product should focus on the prevention and not the containment or the cleaning up of oil spills. On the screen are two images of a ship with a double hull, and our concept includes painting and filling the inner hull of that ship and at the red part with these with our magnetic nanocrystals. In the case of a breakage, these nanocrystals would mix in with the oil, creating a magnetic fluid, and therefore containing this oil onto the tanker, preventing the oil from leaking out. This would allow some time for divers to come in and repair the damage.
If you could take a couple seconds to watch the video that we've made, we can see that on the left side without our product, the oil continues to spill and spread to the rest of the ocean, while on the right side, it doesn't look like it's moving, but the oil inside the ship hull is not leaking out because of its magnetic components. Now, how does this work? Well, when we were in UCLA, we got two irons, FeCl3 and FeCl2, and added it to a base to create Fe3O4. That is our magnetic crystal. However, that was a water-soluble solution, therefore it does not mix to oil solutions. Therefore, we added oleic acid to make it an oil soluble, which will mix to the oil, and that became our magnetic ferrofluid.
All of this science is great, but what really matters is the feasibility. On the top left figure, you can see that our product, the nanocrystal paint, costs $3.34 per kilogram. On the bottom left figure, we see that our product actually costs 2 to 3% of the actual tanker cost, so it's only a small addition. It's like a small fraction, I guess. And another thing that's really important to us is that our product costs 0.05% of the average oil spill cost. This shows how big of an investment our product is. We can save so much money. With the help from other companies and the funding of $25,000, we hope to create a prototype ready for 2025. Together, we will stop oil spills. Thank you.
Have you guys looked at how large the crack can be for this to actually still work?
Since the entire hull, if we go back to the picture, since the entire hull is covered in the nanocrystal paint, it doesn't really matter how big the crack is because it covers the entire area. Therefore, the spill will. So
does it matter the leakage rate at which it comes out? So for example, if they hit an iceberg, right, and the hole is 3 meters by 10 meters, right, versus a crack that is a meter by 2 inches, right? Is there a size of hole or size of crack that this starts failing at?
We're not exactly sure about the exact answer, but based off what we've tested out so far, it was very effective. So,
and as you can see, it also the nanocrystals are surrounding the entire hole, so it doesn't matter where it is. And let's say, well, our starting layer of how much nanocrystals we would put is 0.5, but we can also increase that layer. So if the crack is really big and maybe the industry wants to increase that, how much nanocrystals are going to be placed, they can do that, so they won't have to worry about how big the crack is going to be.
Have you guys looked into what's the typical reason why oil spills take place and what the typical damage is on an oil tanker that causes a spill?
Well, it's usually human mistake.
I mean, the damage itself. What's the typical damage that is impacting the tanker?
When an oil tanker sails, we can't really assume that the trip will be safe. Like, no one really expected Titanic to run into the iceberg because like accidents do happen, and we don't really plan that. Therefore, this is like a backup plan, saying like if something that bad were to happen, this is there as like a cushion, so nothing tragic will happen.
Cool. Thank you.
So the idea is that you make the oil a magnetic fluid, and then you have a magnet somewhere that confines it.
It is magnetic, so
Yeah, but,
yes.
but just being magnetic won't keep it in. Then it needs another magnet to keep it in. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. If you look at the model, around the white space outside of the red area of the wall, there's a yellow line going through it. That's actually a copper wire, which is going to be an electric switch would be turned on to make it magnetic to pull the oil back in to create a blockade.
So it'll have an electric current to it.
So you're going to build an electromagnet into this so that you don't have to have it on all the time.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
Uh-huh.
And this one's hard. Have you actually thought about the forces that you would require to keep that much oil from spilling, and how strong an electromagnet you might need?
We tested it, so.
But you tested it little.
Yeah,
Have you
but like,
did you think,
well,
you can't test it big for sure, but could you calculate it?
we need money to fund that research.
Okay, that's a good answer.
And actually, if we could go back to the slide with the costs, it tells us how much we'd need for the iron oxide, I guess. So from what we've researched, we're just looking for how much we'd need for different types of tankers, and the only type of force we're concerned about is the water pressure. We learned that the deeper it is in the water, the harder it is to keep it in because the pressure rises.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so our next company to come up and present is MPM.
Let me just make sure that this is my height. I don't know how tall it is. Okay. Good morning. My name is Selena Kitchener.
Hi, I'm Carly Manel. And my name is Abigail Bagalar. And our fourth partner, Jennifer Elliott, could not be here today as she's presenting at our high school graduation. Our company is Mudslide Prevention Material, or MPM.
This video is actual footage we shot while up in Montecito. We went there to witness the actual destruction we had seen all over the news. But seeing it in person was unlike anything we had ever witnessed before. We hope that we can prevent this from ever happening again. Liquefaction mudslides bring mass destruction to places near unstable hillsides. When a hill is burned and then receives heavy rainfall, the soil saturates and the hill gives way. We hope to create a super hydrophobic coating on a biodegradable medium to repel rainwater and ultimately prevent mudslides from occurring.
Our goal is to create a super hydrophobic biodegradable granular medium that can prevent a liquefaction mudslide by repelling rainwater before saturation occurs. This product will have nanoposts that are 300 nanometers tall that prevent the water from interacting with the surface, causing it to ball up and roll off. This type of coating will be applied to a biodegradable granular medium, and ideally the coating will wear off after 1 to 2 months of use, after the danger of a mudslide has passed. This will allow for the all-natural medium to biodegrade and let plants regrow to naturally stabilize the area. This product will be implemented similarly to flame retardant. This will reduce manual labor and ensure an even coating on any area at risk of a mudslide. When we actually spoke to the fire department in Montecito, they confirmed that this would be the most effective way to distribute this type of product.
There are only two competitors for our product. The first is sandbags, cost $1.06 per bag, plus the manual labor to fill them and then put them out. Sandbags do not prevent mudslides. All they do is divert the already existing mud flow. Our second competitor is hydroseeding, which costs about 18 cents per square foot of coverage. Hydroseeding plants seeds in the ground to promote fast plant growth. However, that takes up to a week to work, which makes it virtually obsolete in a time of true crisis. Our product is a bit more expensive, costing about 27 cents per square foot of coverage. However, it would be ready to use immediately, and it's overall more effective.
A biodegradable granular medium made of plant starches and a vegetable oil resin costs 2 cents per square foot of coverage. The superhydrophobic coating for the medium costs an average of 75 cents per square foot of coverage, but since the liquid can be reused approximately 3 times, as the medium is soaked and not sprayed, the cost is brought down to 25 cents, bringing the total cost of our product to 27 cents per square foot of coverage. We would charge $1.50 for 1 square foot of coverage. According to the Center for American Progress, the federal government spends an average of $45.3 million in disaster relief each year. This makes the cost of our product, even for a large area, minimal compared to the average federal spending in disaster relief and the hundreds of millions of dollars in damages and hundreds of lives that our product could save. Overall, we are asking for only $215,000 for the first year's funding and the beginning steps as laid out in our timeline.
First, we will apply for a utility patent to protect our idea, which can take 1 to 2 months to do and around a year to receive. During this time, we will conduct further testing to ensure that our formula is effective. After this, we will get certification from the United States Department of Agriculture to ensure that our product is safe to use in the environment. This can take anywhere from 6 to 10 weeks. After this, we will begin to produce and manufacture our product.
Our next step will be to create a website and begin to advertise to local governments, which may take anywhere from 2 to 4 months. Then we will begin to sell our product and ship it out to buyers. We may also begin advertising to individual consumers within 4 to 6 months. Lastly, we hope to pay back our investors and continue to develop our product within 8 months.
We would begin by only marketing to local governments, as they have the resources to implement this product and they can prevent large-scale disasters like the Montecito mudslide. Eventually, we would begin to sell to homeowners associations, as they can protect small communities, and eventually to individual consumers through local stores to protect their personal backyards.
Eventually, our product can be expanded into different versions. These versions could include adding seeds to promote plant growth once the medium biodegrades, adapting the implementation to be used in flood prevention and water diversion, and, as previously stated, expanding the market to reach homeowners associations and individual consumers. By evolving our product in these ways, our materials could be used in more situations and reach a larger audience. With further research and testing, our product could save hundreds of millions of dollars and, more importantly, hundreds of lives around the world each year. We would like to thank the citizens of Montecito and the Montecito Fire Department for opening their doors to us and starting a conversation about how to prevent a travesty like this from happening again. Thank you.
So you're missing one of your team members.
Yes.
And as we all know, when you work in a team, it's not only your own strengths which are important, it's being able to identify the strengths in all of your other team members and contribute equally. How early on did you know that your team member couldn't be part of it, and how did you distribute the efforts? I see that if she's out of the photo.
Yeah.
But how did you work on that?
We knew pretty early on that she wasn't going to be able to attend Nanovation because we knew when our graduation was going to be. So that didn't really affect how we worked, but it did affect how we split up the presentation, obviously. This is from the day that we went up to Montecito, which she also couldn't, she wasn't available for. But we worked really well together overall, and all of the research was us working together. It was just the presentation and the few outside of school things that she sadly couldn't attend.
And that was a passion. This issue is a passion for all of you, and you wanted to do this. This was your choice.
Yes, definitely.
Great.
I have a hypothetical which has been going through my mind since I read your proposal. So let's say there's a widespread area that is subject to flooding, but it crosses 2 county lines. One area is on one county line and the other is in another county, okay? So the flood happens and one city, county, has a governmental entity, has agreed to go with your plan and the other hasn't. What happens? Is there enough of your product on the ground to help with the flood on the area that's not covered by your product? And how would a scenario like that unfold with your product, where one area is bought in and the other hasn't?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Thank you. I think it depends on where the county is brought up, because I think we would need it towards the top of the hill as to where that's where everything comes down. So it would depend on which one was positioned. It may be more crucial. If they decide not to go with us, then that's going to be their problem, I think. Sorry if you don't want to take over, but yeah, it also depends on where the positioning is at. I think that'll be crucial. And I'm not sure exactly what happens with flame retardant with that as well. I did not find anything on that, but I'm sure that might be a dispute they have as well, so I'm not sure.
Positioning and altitude of
Yes.
where you place this is important.
Yes.
Yeah, and also with our product, with mudslides in general, as much water as you can prevent from seeping into the hillside is going to help. So even if only half of the area that we wanted to be able to cover was covered, it would help in the long run. How much, we don't know, but it would still.
Can you talk to me a little bit more about the product itself? So you talked about a sort of a nano rough surface, but how does this interact with the granular nature of dirt? The goal is to let the water run off and not soak in so you don't mobilize mud. So you still have a water runoff problem, but running water is not as destructive as running mud. So I'm okay with that part. But how do there's big pores in dirt. So how does this product actually work and how does it interact with the dirt? You got a great business plan, but I'm very confused about the engineering details.
Okay. One thing we would really like to look into and include in our product is an adhesive quality to make sure it doesn't, when it's placed on a hill, it doesn't roll down, which would defeat its whole purpose. So we'd really want it to either adhere to the surface it's on or to itself to make it not roll off when water hits it. If that kind of answers your question.
Well, no,
What is it granular?
More specifically, what exactly is it? What does it look like?
Okay, we have a picture of it actually on one of the first slides. This is of a different product that we were inspired by and we would look at down in the bottom left corner. It would look similar to that, we would hope.
Yeah, it's a material called matter-by, and usually it's actually melted down and made into like plastic sheets basically, but we actually did testing for one of our school projects that involved this idea, and in that we discovered that a granular material was better than
a bulkier one.
Yeah, like a mulch or something like that.
So it's like a fine grain that has a super hydrophobic quality, and then it would just be distributed out.
Like pellets.
Yeah.
And then
the surface of the grains are super
hydrophobic.
Yeah,
Yes.
when we put the coating onto it,
Okay, so then the question is, they're pellets, they're hydrophobic. Will water not still percolate through them and get into the ground below?
It will, especially since you can't guarantee a full coverage, but limiting the amount of water to avoid saturation is what will prevent all that mud coming down and causing boulders to roll down and take homes and lives.
Yeah, and how much the water percolates through it is something that we would definitely need to look into on a larger scale.
I think we have time for one more question, if there's one more.
Oh gosh, okay.
Quick question. Is there a shelf life for this?
Yeah, so it lasts about 3 years in storage on its own. So it can last up to 3 years in storage. And then
one of its qualities is obviously it's biodegradable, since plant life needs to be able to regrow and it can't without water. So after the danger of the mudslide is past and that insane rain season is past, the coating would eventually wear away, and everything is all natural. That's a really important part of our project. And then since the medium is biodegradable and all natural, it'll biodegrade, and that'll allow for plants to regrow naturally and have the hill naturally stabilized, which is our ideal.
So what is the byproduct after this? it biodegrades.
I believe it's oxygen and water.
Yeah, it's nothing.
Yeah, it's all natural.
That was a really important part when we were researching materials and what we would look into.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so team 3, company 3, is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit.
Hi, good evening, everyone. We're 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. That is the ideal body temperature for humans. My name is Undua.
My name is Ingrid.
My name is Jacqueline.
My name is Vivian.
Our product would be a two-piece bodysuit that would regulate the body temperature depending on the surroundings. It would also be convenient for military use.
And adding on to the military, the soldiers often have to be deployed to foreign countries where the weather is unknown and the climates could be extreme. Plus, their average clothing is usually around 10 pounds, plus the weight ranges depending on whether it's hot weather or cold. And our product allows the body temperature to be controlled so that the soldiers don't have to worry about how cold or hot their body is, and they can focus on protecting the country and protecting the people.
How our product will work is by using triboelectric nanogenerator that powers up the device. Triboelectric nanogenerator uses mechanical movement to power up the organic thermoelectric modules, and we are also using screen-printed organic thermoelectric modules.
With the organic thermoelectric modules inside the suit, there will be printed polymers that go in a pattern, and the pattern, if you go in one direction, will heat the suit, and if you change the other direction, it will cool the suit. And this, since it's polymers, it'll also be thinner, giving more flexibility to the suit.
We will be using sensors in order to get all information, all body temperatures from the whole body and not just one part of the body. The sensors will map the entire body, aka find out the body temperature from one part of the body and compare it with another part of the body, because the body does not have the same body temperature everywhere. It will actively work with the whole suit in order to get correct readings and temperature, and it is thick, soft, and skin-like.
Our competitors are Dama Innovation. Their product is a jacket that heats and cools using Peltier plates and heatsink that disperse the heat throughout the jacket equally. Their product weighs around 700 grams, and the internal temperature ranges from 20 to 40 Celsius. The ambient temperature is -50 to 50 Celsius.
How our product is better, we are using organic thermoelectric modules and triboelectric modules which are softer versus the Peltier plate heat sinks, which are hard objects. The sensors will connect to an app via Bluetooth or an app that you can install on your phone. And our product is a bodysuit which will offer full body protection versus the competitors, which will only protect one part of the body.
In addition, we'll have a hard remote, so if the user ever loses connection from their phone to their suit, they can still always control the body temperature, and if ever the suit gets out of control, overheats, or cools down too fast, they will have a reset button that can completely shut down the suit. In addition, we would like to extend our project later to change the appearance of the color. As a soldier, you need to be able to blend in with the environment, and thus the camouflage ability, which we would hopefully like to show up from how Octopus changes their appearance, which is the adaptive infrared reflecting platform.
These are the materials we will be using and an estimate of how much we would be using of them.
Plus, we also plan to reach out to the military, as the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency often supports startup companies who have ideas that will help better the military and the technology that they want to improve. Thank you.
Okay, here's the big question. How do you wash it?
The idea is that it would last longer, thus not also washing. And if you know more about the military, they often don't actually wash their clothes, so they go long hours without washing their clothes. So that's actually not that big of a concern when considering the military.
But you have to, people sweat. You have to somehow be able to do your laundry.
That would be from further research too. Yeah.
What's the cost of production?
Cost of production, if you can go back to the last slide. Right now, that's an estimate of how much our product will cost, how much every part of our product will cost. We don't have some of the costs up there because some of the products we're using are still like stuff that you can make or stuff that are still being researched right now.
There's a lot of our stuff, especially with like the octopus one, is still in research process, and some of the polymers also are in research process. So a lot of the ones we don't officially have data for yet.
There's no more questions? All right. Oh, wait. All right, well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right, so company number 4 to present is Cal Contacts. Mysterious. So before you guys start, can we reset the clock? Perfect. Okay.
Whoa, can you guys see that? Dude,
Oh
what
my
is
gosh, I
that?
can't see it at all.
Wait, can you guys see that? I think this will help. Cal Contacts. Contacts after LASIK. The decision is clear. Cal Contacts is an alternative way to distribute post-LASIK medication back into the eye. Regular, boring eye drop medications can be seen as super, I say extremely, ineffective. On the graph to your right-hand side, the red line indicates the effectiveness of medication over time. You can see that once the medication is applied to the eye, it takes a depressing plummet down to being only 18%. This is due to the washout of tearing, reflexive tearing as well as reflexive blinking. A solution to this would be our amazing Cal Contacts. These dissolvable contacts have a controlled release of medication and is only applied once a day to decrease infection rates. On the picture to your right-hand side, you can see that medication from eye drops as well as contacts can be compared side by side. About an hour or so, you can see that there's still medication visible in the contact lens while all of the medication in the eye drops have been diluted. Cal Contacts increases the medication's bioavailability to provide patients with faster healing. There are 2 stages to the structure of these contact lenses. The first stage would be, obviously, the polyvinyl alcohol hydrogel. This disperses 2 types of medications in the eye using a nanopharmacosomes. The second stage would be a PVH shell, which lubricates the eye and prevents dry eyes from occurring.
We use a PVAH base because it is water soluble and is more oxygen permeable than your typical silicone hydrogel lens, and it is also more comfortable for the patient. in the contacts, there are pharmacosomes, which are nano-sized vesicles, and with them, we are able to release the medication in a controlled manner, and the medications being bromphenic and anti-inflammatory, and trimethoprim and antibacterial. And in this graph, as you can see, the blue line represents how the release of the medication in the contact without pharmacosomes. As you can see, it is a sad 60%. However, in the three upper lines is how the pharmacosomes in the medication is. And as you can see, it is 80% and higher.
For the first 6 months, we're only $1.5 million to have FDA approval along with testing. For the next 8 months, we will need $800,000 in order to have a manufacturing facility to mass produce this product. For the next 3 months, we'll need $100,000 for social media use, along with talking to optometrists and LASIK surgeons to have our product known and out there. For the next 4 months, we'll need $1 million to distribution because we want to distribute through trucks, ships, and our main goal is to introduce this internationally. Our main competitor would be the Nano wafer, which is the technology advancement of having dissolvable contacts like we do. Their difference is the target market is towards glaucoma, and our target market is towards post-LASIK. Our marketing analysis today is there's 30 million people out there that partake in this surgery. Eye drops make $15 billion a year. We can give you a piece of this pie right here. We can give you $6.3 billion with a B. Our first pair of contacts will be $20, making us 800% in profit, and our PVH contacts is $2.45, making over 500% in profit. We expected to be the first 3 months to introduce to 150,000 consumers, making you over $35 million in profit. Why we are different, we're for dry eye, and along with anti-inflammatory, we can make it towards you and specialize towards you. Also, we are $245, being 50% cheaper than eye drops out there at $500. Oh my gosh. We're more effective than eye drops, and we're more efficient than eye drops. Our vision, mission, and values, we want to provide an effective and efficient release of medication. Our mission is to create cheap and accessible pair of dissolving contacts, and our value is to people who undergo LASIK surgery to have a comfortable healing process and a life without impaired vision. Before LASIK surgery, you have to fumble around in the middle of the night trying to grab your glasses or having to constantly buy prescriptive contacts. And after LASIK surgery, the problem is it's a make it or break it. The healing process is so crucial, and eye drops aren't even that effective. We can open the door for having Cal contacts, a dissolvable pair of contacts that gives you the right kind of medication, being efficient, effective, convenient, and comfortable for the user. And obviously, on a side note, we want to make a profit for you.
Thank you. These are our references.
First of all, Howard's probably going to want to talk to you with all those billions of dollars of profit you're going to generate. So my question is this. I read your proposal, and I have the following question. How do you feel about the fact that your product will have to be tested on animals?
So animal testing is a standard part of testing contact lenses and other uses for eye drops because you can't properly try and do it with other like in vitro testing. So while it is very unfortunate, it is much better to test on animals before testing on humans. And so we want to make sure that people get the most optimal treatment with no unnecessary side effects. So we have to make sure that people get the best that they deserve.
So I'm always going to be the one who's going to ask you the science and engineering questions. So stop. Go back one. So you have this graph that shows this release. So you haven't made your product yet. So this is clearly from some related system. Can you tell us what is this related system, and why do you believe that this will accurately reflect the behavior of your contacts? That's my first question. And then my second question is, they're degradable. What are the degradation products, and how do they get flushed away?
This graph is from the stomach system, and the blue line shows it without pharmacosomes, and the upper line show it with pharmacosomes. And from the stomach, you can see that with pharmacosomes, it is more effective.
And so the first line, which has a 60% efficiency, it shows the drugs just being injected into the stomach. And with the F1, F2, F3, and F4, it all uses pharmacosomes with varying ratios of pharmacosome to drug. And so then the pharmacosomes act as increasing the solubility of the medications so that they can be properly absorbed into the surrounding body.
But the stomach is a very different environment than the eye. So do you have evidence that this data will also hold in the eye?
Hi, can I answer that question?
The testing was to prove if pharmacosomes can provide as a reservoir, and if it's possible, and pharmacosomes will be a reservoir for us to have the medication with bromphenic and trimethoprim, then it is possible for more testing and see the hydrogel and how it will work with PVAH. And our idea is if it works here scientifically, then it should work on a real setting of having a hydrogel. Although it's your stomach acid that we're dealing with, I'm pretty sure there's content of pharmacosomes that is not used in the stomach.
You said another question. Could you please repeat that?
Can I remember what it was? What?
The byproducts.
Oh, byproducts. What are the byproducts and how are they flushed away and are they irritants?
So the PVAH is structured with several crosslinks, and we can adjust the size of these crosslinks to change the size to make the dissolve rate different. And then the crosslinks are usually, since they're extremely small, they're not dissolvable on the surface of the eye. So then they'll just be treated kind of like a different foreign particle like dirt, or they'll just be flushed away through reflexive tearing into the nasolacrimal ducts.
In your time scale, there is a, I think the FDA approval process, right? Mm-hmm. Are you going through the 510K process, or what process are you going to go through? What do you need to go through, I guess?
I think we need to go to prove long-term effects of the medication on whatever we test on, and we'll have data behind them to have it FDA approved. The most important thing is if the product works, and during the long time run, for what we test on, which we believe would be mice, to see is if it's feasible, if it's possible, and there's no side effects that happen into our product, and that's how I think we believe we'll have it FDA approved. So I'm thinking the 510K.
Okay, so are you going to base that on a precedent product that you're going to create that it's not any worse off? What type of 510K process do you envision? That's actually a pretty fairly short period. Are you going to be what class? Class 1, class 2, class 3? Do you guys know?
We'll get back to you on that.
Are there any more questions, please?
Yeah. So. Kind of going off the regulatory, but speaking about reimbursement, you mentioned the eye drop solution is $500, I believe, per treatment. Do you want to go? Yeah. So $500 per treatment, and your product you're proposing around $250, $245. Why are eye drops so much more expensive when the complexity to produce is probably a lot lower? Is it the reimbursement rate is $500, or?
Oh, so we're using different medications, and these medications have a lower cost, and the packaging cost is different, I believe. And so with our medications, they had to be compatible with the pharmacosomes, and the pharmacosomes needed to have medications that were either lipophilic or hydrophilic, whereas the standard medications were steroidal, so they were hydrophobic. And so then we had to change to bromphenic, which is an anti-inflammatory that is lipophilic, so would properly bond with the pharmacosomes. And the other antibacterial medicine that we used, which is trimethoprim, is also a lot cheaper than other antibiotics used for eye drop medication. And these have been tested as post-LASIK treatments. In fact, the bromphenic actually had a higher speed of treatment than the other steroidal anti-inflammatory medications.
I have one more quick question, and this is a hard one. So you have these little pharmacosomes, which are just droplet reservoirs. How big are the drops? Because when they get big, they scatter light, and a contact
so they are
has to be
50 nanometers
clear.
in diameter, and they're 50 nanometers in diameter. And our mentors actually provided us with a formula to measure if they would actually refract any light. Do you want to know the specific formula? Or?
Well, no, just I want to know if they'll make clear contacts.
So to answer the class 1, 2, and 3 FDA, we're not too sure about that, but obviously our contacts are very, very simple in materials, and to have it FDA approved with the medication is very simple, along with just what we need to do is to make sure PVAH is a moisturized enough hydrogel that dissolves properly into the eye. And so we'll have that data provided with the FDA approval since the materials are very, very simple with using only a few ingredients.
Going back to the question about the light refracting, so since the formula that we used was the radius of the pharmacosomes had to be less than lambda over 2 pi n, where lambda was the wavelength and n was the index of refractivity. And so then when we plugged all this in, it had to be less than about 30 nanometers radius. And so our radius is 25 nanometers, so it would not refract any light.
Are you looking for a job?
I'm not 16 yet, so it's not legal.
So then I won't pay you. The other question I had was the current issues with eye drops. What are the costs from a health side and costs from the consumer side to pay for treatments in addition or other issues, just so I can get a better sense of what the cost per conversion is?
Okay, so this is a high-end product since LASIK surgery is up to $4,000. So it's people who have disposable money and the high income, and especially in Southern California, of how we want to look our best and have a feeling of our best. So we don't want to wear glasses or prescriptive contacts. Eye drops are so expensive is because of lettergrass and other types of ingredients in there. They don't use just simple materials like we do, along with the packaging for the eye drops itself. And they have to be 100% efficient when you first put it into the eye, but they dilute over time due to the reflexive blinking and tearing. That's why it's so expensive, because people have to continuously buy it, and the average cost with that is $500 because it's very ineffective, and you will wake up in the middle of the night with oh my gosh, I have dry eye, or oh my gosh, my eye is burning, I need help kind of thing. But our product is dissolving, and we hope of our goal to dissolve in 12 hours so you can sleep with the contact in, and it'll just kind of dilute slowly throughout your eye, and with your reflexive tearing, it'll be fine throughout the night. You can sleep safe and soundly.
I think this will be the last question, but go ahead.
It's a quick one. I'm always interested So in the teams in the presentation, how you all work together. So this is a nice sized team, and there's a lot of information. How do you approach it? Because some people seem very science oriented, and how do you look at this as a team? Because as you go through life, as we said, it's understanding everyone's strength and what they can give to a.
When we first formed the team, we all, and decided on our topic, we all decided to research on our own, and we would have frequent meetings besides with our mentor, on our own. We would meet up and talk about the articles, and we would add on to the PowerPoint that we had. And then from there, we split up the slides, not really accordingly to what we did, just so that it would be easier to present the slides and less transitionings.
And then some people did science, some people designed some of the posters that we had shown in our presentation. Other people focused on the business. We focused on editing everything and stuff like that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So our next company to present is Nano Panel. So if you can get Nano Panel.
Hi, everybody. Technically, it's still before 12 o'clock, so good morning. My name is Darren Ali.
I'm Aaron Novinsky.
I'm Noah Silac-er.
I'm Joshua Daniel, and we are part of Nano Panels. As you can tell by this chart, electricity is rising by the year. This is a big issue for companies. By our solar panel, we decided to decrease the cost of electricity being spent. We could later implement this technology into commercial companies like Bird, who are being impacted on how their scooters get charged. Now Darren will explain how solar cells work.
Solar panels produce energy by exciting electrons, which go from a higher state of energy to a lower state of energy. And then the flow of electrons would, what it does is it creates a direct current, which can flow through an inverter and create an alternating current, which can be used for whatever product you want to use it for. The type of solar cell we would want to be using are the dye-sensitized solar cells. That's mainly because it has a high efficiency in dim lit areas, and we don't know where a product can be placed when it's being used. Dye-sensitized solar cells are easy to replace and as well as cheap to produce, but a huge issue is that it degrades due to UV light.
So in order to be competitive in today's market, we want to improve dye-sensitized solar cells through a technology called light scattering. And so what this is if you can see in the image, you have a layer of nanoparticles, and so the light rays that hit that layer refract at an angle that is more parallel to the actual panel itself. And so what that does is it makes it so that the light remains in the solar panel for a more extended period of time, and that increases the energy absorbance in the solar panel. So this is important because, like Darren was talking about, when we're marketing to specific companies like Bird, we don't know where their scooters are going to be placed. They could be placed in shaded areas, they could be placed in the light, and so we want to make sure that we're maximizing the amount of energy that the solar panels can produce so that we can reduce the amount that Bird has to spend when paying their chargers, because the scooters will in part charge themselves.
So the product we're actually using is TiO2 and silver. So these are the nanoparticles that are being implemented into the dye-sensitized solar cells. So the reason we actually found these and chose these products is because TiO2 can actually absorb UV radiation, which is something that affects dye-sensitized solar cells. If you look at the chart in the top right, you can see the absorption wavelengths of our product. So the silver and titanium dioxide absorb, well, this is just for the base product. So nanoparticles actually will shift the scale even farther left so that it will not interfere with our solar panel. So our solar panel will absorb probably around the 440 to 510 nanometer size of light.
Okay, so when we're marketing to a company like Bird, like Josh was talking about earlier, Bird has chargers, and they pay people to charge their scooters every day. And so we know that since energy costs are rising at an exponential rate and will continue to be rising at that rate in the future, as we saw on the chart on one of the first slides, we know that at some point Bird is going to have to start compensating for that increased energy cost by paying their chargers more. And so what we're trying to do is to mitigate, at least in part, the cost that Bird has to spend on their chargers. So our plan is to have dye-sensitized solar cells that are 20 inches by 10 inches implemented on each Bird, as you can see in that image. And at peak performance, each of these solar cells can generate 2.24 watts per hour. And so what this means is that if you extrapolate this to over the span of a year, you're essentially saving Bird, we're saving Bird between $180 and $720 per year per scooter. And so if we think about the fact that Bird is expanding right now. So right now Bird is primarily in West LA and Santa Monica and Venice, but they're trying to expand to other cities. We know that there are hundreds of scooters out there, and if we extrapolate this to further years, you're essentially saving Bird tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, over the span of a couple of years because of the amount of scooters that they have. And so we're asking for an initial $100,000 investment in order to get a laboratory, to hire labor workers, and to produce the prototypes for these solar cells, to pitch to Bird, and eventually to implement them into Bird scooters. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I could literally ask like 20 questions, but I won't. For this one, because I actually know the company pretty well. Couple of questions. One is, you mentioned that 2.24 is the peak, right?
Right.
Almost never does it ever hit every major
Yeah,
peak.
exactly. That's why we have the light scattering, to try to get close to that.
So that savings, the 180 to 720, is that based on the peak 2.24?
So actually, the 180 to 720 is based off of how often it can fully charge of the solar panel. Charge the device. So we know that Bird charges about they pay $5 to $20. So we're trying to alleviate prices from that. So our panel can do about 2.24 watts. But do you want to know where we got that number from, or?
Well, so for example, the peak, you'll never really always you never hit that peak.
Yeah.
Right. So it's always going to be some average kind of wattage, right? So you're going to have to be based upon that average wattage versus peak to calculate effective savings, effective cost, because it's going to boil down to cost per watt.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's basically
So
what you're going to do.
the 2.24 is the optimistic end, and that relates to the $720. So that's like the higher end. Like if you assumed that, you know, every day of every year, each bird scooter hit 2.24 watts per hour, then that'd be the $720 in savings. But that's why the range is so large, because we can never really predict where each scooter is going to
So
be.
what's the average CapEx cost to retrofit that?
Say again?
What's the capital expenditure for a bird to actually retrofit a scooter for that?
Oh, to like implement them into the device.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to cost, I mean, you have to have a laborer who actually installs the solar panels and also has to hook it up to the battery. So we'd have to look into the exact price and talk to Bird to see like how much their prices like for implementing and creating the scooters. But we know that at least like for every, this is taking in all the minimums too. So when we created our chart, we always took the minimum values to show what at least you could make. So on the chart, you can see within a year and a half, it already saves you money. So no matter what the price is for implementing the product, we know there's going to be some result where they will make money, hundreds of dollars for every scooter.
That is not necessarily true. For Bird, for example, that scooter, do you know who makes that scooter?
No, we do not.
No, we do
So
not.
it's a Chinese-made scooter that, I think it's from Xiaomi. That scooter costs retail somewhere around $200 to $300 max, right? So if your implementation is going to cost significantly more, and their business model effectively is that thing's going to wear, and so is yours, right? So if your total cost of wear and tear, by the time that thing depreciates, right, it better work out from a business model standpoint. All right, so I think you're going to have to figure out exactly what is their cost per mile per depreciated scooter, right, in order to figure out if your business economics is going to work for a retrofit for this, right? Because there's going to be a line at which it doesn't make sense. And the other thing is, since it's on the footing here, have you looked into the ruggedization of that? Because that's going to take a beating, and solar cells generally don't take a beating.
So we couldn't implement it in the picture, but so an idea we actually had in our write-up we wrote about was that so since the scooter is electronically activated, we would have some sort of panel that could automatically, whenever the scooter is not in use, the panel will open up revealing the solar panel, therefore it can charge. But then when it's in use, it can close back up and then hide to protect it from wear and tear.
It's not so much the open close portion.
No, so it would the place where your foot usually lies on, right? It would be a kind of like a panel that would either open up or slide open, and underneath it would be revealing the solar panel, so that way all the light would be directed on it.
So
once it's like locked,
so what I'm talking about is more the vibrational impacts, or as you actually literally go down the street on this, right?
Right.
The vibrational impacts on that over time, the wear
Yeah.
on the surface on the solar panel itself. Have you guys looked into that
We
at
were
all?
looking into different forms of glass first to see that way that we could support the back and the front of the panel, but we still are looking into how to improve on that.
Because one of the biggest things, I'll let these guys go too, but one of the biggest things for solar is just, it's really hard. Almost never is it really moving for the most part, and that's a big problem.
Yeah.
So okay, I have one comment and one question, which is, you didn't really emphasize the fact that these are low-cost solar. Silicon solar is more expensive, but it has a 20-year lifetime, but the scooter doesn't have a 20-year lifetime.
Right.
So that was an opportunity to sort of make a connection of match. So my question, as always, is the science question. So you said you have a coating that has titania, which will absorb the UV and scatter and couple light, and that's all great, and silver. Silver, I guess I don't understand what its goal is, because it generally just absorbs light and dumps it as heat. So what is the role of the silver in your coating?
So when we were researching the products, we wanted to find something that was able to scatter the light as well. We just wanted to implement more. Here, I'll go back to are you going yet? So the reason we chose silver as well is because some of the articles we were reading was recommending it as something that could help to scatter the light, actually. That was why.
So it will both scatter and absorb. So can you comment on the trade-off?
Well, the absorption, like we said, is it's generally absorbing all the lower wavelengths of light, which we ideally, our solar panel will actually absorb the higher wavelengths. That's why we found a product that would not interfere with the light that was being absorbed. So on the scale, you can kind of see where it does absorb, but it's also going to be shifted farther to the left, because the smaller the nanoparticle is, the farther left on the spectrum that it'll absorb light.
That's true for titania, but not for silver.
Oh.
Silver will stay in the same place for size.
I have a question. So I think it's obvious I am not a user of birds. That means I'm not an expert on this topic. However, I have heard some resistance to the use of birds in some communities, and the obstacle is that the scooters are left all over the place, right? So you have pegged your business plan, at least from what you've presented and in the document you gave us, on birds. So what happens as the company tries to expand their presence in other communities and they meet resistance to having the vehicles in those communities? That's part A. And part B is, what is your plan B?
Well, as I don't know the specific locations, but Bird was talking about right now, they're actually moving still like into different cities as of right now. But we were also thinking just other, like let's say scooters or vehicles in general. That way it's not just targeted to one type of scooter, so that other people would be able to buy it as well.
So in terms of Bird right now, we're not really seeing like a decline in the use of birds in like the Santa Monica area. And so I understand like there definitely is resistance, and I've seen people who are like opposed to Bird. But in general, there's not much, like there's pretty widespread use of it in like West Los Angeles. Like you can't go like 2 blocks without seeing a bird park somewhere. So we don't really see that problem occurring like in the future when expanding to different cities, just because it isn't really happening now. And even if it does happen, that's not necessarily going to affect us significantly, because the expansion of birds will benefit us. But even with the current amount of birds that are like in use in Santa Monica and Venice, we can still make profit on those.
Have you heard of a company by the name of Blockbuster?
Oh yes, they got obliterated.
I want you to think about that in relation to your business model. And some of the things that you've just said are some of the thinking I think Blockbuster had, you know. So take that into consideration as you grow your company.
We have time for one more question.
I think along with that, getting in and getting out fast on something like this, you know, because Blockbuster, the investors in that, the ones that got out pretty fast before it went all digital. But, so I missed the point, the part where on the competition end, is this a proprietary invention? I mean, what your competition is going to come fast and furious. You think that the bird people and all of the scooters would be thinking about how do we do this in a solar, environmentally clean way with no impact? So how do you protect it? And would you, if it's a technology, would you then license that technology out to someone like Bird so they could include it in their construction in China where they're making it, or would you sell them the unit and they'd have to install it?
So the plan, our current business plan is to, for us to produce the actual unit, so the solar panel itself, and then sell it to Bird, like you were saying, for them to implement it into their scooters.
All right, well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we are about halfway through. So at this point, we'll take just a very brief 5-minute break. So if anyone needs to use the restrooms or anything, if you just go outside and then go down the hall to the left, you can find restrooms, and we'll be back here in 5 minutes.
I thought I told everyone.
Nah, they don't remember.
They are going.
They're like last, aren't they?
No, they're ninth.
Okay, so they're after.
They are. So once we
golden
get
detection.
Yeah. So once we get back from the break, we've got 1, 2, 3 companies, and then them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Then I can run away? No.
Yeah. If you want to, yes, you can run away. But if you stay.
Is this a clicker? Okay, am I doing the clicker? Mine right there. Okay, I want this. Can you move, Ryan, can you move to? So, okay, I'm gonna hold it up. Hmm?
Oh, I know which group this is.
Also, I'm gonna have to start out by saying my hands are too sweaty. Oh my god. Where's that going? Too high. Yeah.
All right, so if everyone could take their seats, we are going to go ahead and continue. We have all of our judges. Excellent. All right, so the next team to present is Ecofilm.
We would like to begin with a quick snack.
Joey, what are you doing? You can't eat plastic.
That's not plastic, that's our invention. Using sodium alginate hydrogels to replace single-serving plastics.
This is Crystal.
I'm Bella.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Paige.
And I'm Joey.
Good morning, and we're from Valencia High School. The disposal of non-biodegradable plastics is raising serious health and environmental concerns, with 93% of Americans containing BPA in their blood and urine. Bisphenol A is an epoxy resin used in the production of almost all consumer plastic goods and has been recognized by the EPA as a known chemical that causes neurotoxic effects on the brain. Additionally, nearly 300 million tons of plastic is produced every year, half of which is for single serving and then thrown away. This accounts for almost 45% of materials landfilled. To help counteract this, we present Ecofilm. A single-serving alginate hydrogel film that can act as a replacement to low-density polyethylene, a common unrecyclable plastic used in common products such as plastic wrap. Ecofilm can be sold within 100% recycled packaging boxes. Ecofilm appeals to the customer's ethics of not putting others and the planet in harm. One can guiltlessly throw it away due to its biodegradability and additionally save people's lives through circumventing the toxic effects of plastic.
Hydrogels are formed by polymer chains cross-linking through electrostatic interactions, forming 3D networks and trapping water at the nanoscale. The proposed hydrogel would consist of a sodium alginate and calcium lactate solution. Sodium alginate is a natural polysaccharide derived from brown algae. The liquid hydrogels would then be dried using evaporation to turn them into a usable film. Since the hydrogels can be naturally evaporated, the process would be more environmentally friendly due to lack of artificial heat and power or energy needed to make the product. In experimentation, our samples have sustained little change over a 2-month period, and we project that they will last for much longer and have a longer shelf life, as literature suggests that alginates and hydrogels of this type can last anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. Furthermore, additives and coatings can be added to allow them to be used in various conditions as well.
Our target customers would be high-end grocery stores such as Whole Foods. Although these stores are generally more expensive, they are successful in selling environmentally friendly alternatives to everyday plastics, and they are still notably profitable. Whole Foods has a profit margin of 4.33%, which is 150% more than Walmart's profit margin of 2.91%. Additionally, the bioplastic industry is said to reach $32.24 billion by 2024 because of increasing popular demand for environmentally friendly products. Current environmentally friendly alternatives to plastics are bioplastics and reusable wraps, but these are not as advantageous as our hydrogels because not all bioplastics are 100% biodegradable in different environments, and since some are meant to be reused, they need to be washed and they are prone to harboring germs, which can make them more unsanitary. Additionally, our hydrogels are 100% edible and they are malleable and they can 100% biodegrade in any environment.
Our budget needs are relatively simple. We used local office costs and average salaries of lab technicians and a human resources representative, along with estimated equipment costs, to calculate a monthly budget of $13,231, which we calculated is $159,000 per year. As a company, we request these funds to have a year's worth of time to learn to make these hydrogels most efficiently and get our name into the common household.
So the first thing we would do would get a patent for these hydrogels, and then we would use them to replace single-serving plastics for foods such as the films on top of ramen, frozen dinners, and K-cups. And then within a year after getting the patent, we would then work to replace grocery bags and Ziploc bags. And then 3 years later, we would later work into getting for non-food items such as shipping and items like that. Thank you.
Did you guys mention what the cost is?
No, we did not. But we have calculated using the materials and the chemicals used that it would be about 22 cents per square foot of this film, leading to a $22 cost for a sheet or a roll of 100 feet.
How does that compare to that current solution?
So we were not able to find any exact numbers on how much it is to produce single sheets of plastic like this, but it is going to be slightly more expensive, but the benefits from the cost that we would save from waste production, it would eventually save money in the long run.
It doesn't replace the adhesive, right? Or is it just the sheet on top?
It would be the sheet on top, but we can put the adhesive on it still. So our hydrogel would be on the sheet.
So there's a lot of bioplastics that people are starting to use. So Trader Joe's, all their bags are now those weird green bags that are biodegradable. So how are your bioplastics different from the other products that are currently just getting out there in the market? And if there are similarities, is this patentable?
So ours differ because, one, the process of making them, it can be done using just natural evaporation and doesn't need any additional energy to be added through like the use of like power plants or something like that. And it is also edible and completely biodegradable, so it can be released into the environment with no worry about it affecting the animals that live there or something like that.
So going back to your target market, you mentioned Whole Foods. Is there a reason why you're not targeting like the producers for instant noodles or the other yogurt that you passed around? That's obviously a higher yield product area.
So because it is slightly more expensive, we would have to start off somewhere that would be willing to sell it. But as we would be able to grow our company and get costs down, then we would go into manufacturers of the films.
In your business plan, you mentioned that you thought you could pay lower wages because you were a startup company. How are you going to attract your employees in what is a very tight job market? And have you thought about other forms of compensation that might help you find really good employees?
So since it is a startup and since we would need proper funding to begin, they would know going into it that although we don't have that much money right now, that as we would be able to grow, that their salaries would increase because we believe this product could go very far. So they would also come in with the knowledge that our product would expand.
So are you going to offer them equity in your company in exchange for lower wages?
We considered it, and we think we would offer a small percentage at the beginning.
I was just curious, so you want to develop this technology, right? Do you want to produce the product and then sell it, or do you want to license it to these companies and get a piece of the action and have support that way?
We would want to produce the product ourselves.
We have time for one more question? Or two
One-
more?
one
Okay,
point
two more
five.
questions.
So my question is the rigidity or flexibility of the material. Is it as strong as the current alternative solutions? Is it stronger, weaker? And also for the coating or the covering, adding color to it to make it reflect sun is also important for product life cycle or product life. For yogurt, things like that, it's important to keep it obviously away from UV light. So that's why they have the kind of reflective coating if you look underneath some of the coverings. So can you comment on your strategy around that?
Right now, the films we made are not as rigid as we'd like them to be, and we did calculate the Young's modulus. However, it wasn't as high as we wished. So as a solution, we'd like to add calcium carbonate nanoparticles to strengthen it and see how that would affect it as it being more rigid. Additionally, we did food color them, and it does work.
So I have a question about water permeability. So the purpose of most of these films is to keep the water in foods and keep them from drying out. So this material, you're making a dry film, but it's actually can form a hydrogel, which means it's hydrophilic, and so it interacts with water. So is it going to swell with water, and is it going to keep water in foods? What do you know, petroleum-derived products are bad because they're based on petroleum, but they're really hydrophobic, and so water doesn't go through them, which is an advantage for packaging.
One aspect of our hydrogel is it is moisture permeable, so it does have preserving qualities. Additionally, it does swell with water, so that could act as the adhesion, as you mentioned before, to sticking to like the product. And additionally, we could experiment with adding a super hydrophobic nano coating to make it waterproof.
Okay. Oh, is there one more very quick question? Nope, we're good? Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right, so I believe the next team is team number 7. Yes, so team Nanofacture.
The wonders of space, the secret she keeps, the promise of the future that she holds for us. NASA's Mars rover Curiosity is currently exploring the surface of Mars, uncovering its secret, except for one unforeseen circumstance. Its tires have holes in them. Its drill is damaged. Pathfinder, a rover before the time of Curiosity, died before its life expectancy due to an internal part breaking. These robots cannot complete half their goals due to breaks that are unfixable by scientists from Earth, causing $2.5 billion to go down the drain. But wait, what if there was a solution? What if NASA could fix these mechanical problems from 55 million kilometers away? We present to you the future. We give you Nanofacture.
Nanofacture particles are a form of programmable matter that can self-assemble on the nanoscale. These particles, we hypothesize that a group of these particles can be used to create any shape that a programmer desires. Note that these particles contain a microcontroller, an ebonite outer shell, a coil of copper wire, an external battery source, and electrostatic latches. The electrostatic latches allow these particles to repel and attract and therefore they can move around each other with no outside forces. The ebonite shell acts as an insulator and was chosen for its durability and low cost. These particles are externally powered using induction, meaning that an electric field powers a copper wire in the center of each particle, and from there the electrostatic latches and the microcontroller draw energy from it. The microcontroller is the unit that processes the code, processes the code that allows these particles to move around within every unit.
Now, our code is our trade secret, but we will gladly answer any questions you have after the presentation.
All right, so we know that the space industry is currently interested in constructive modeling repair systems, as there are currently projects in development to fix satellites that are broken in space. If we look at the current state of the art to meet this need, we see that Made in Space has made a 3D printer that has been implemented on the International Space Station. And while it can print any tools that are necessary, it also has the mass of the filament as well as the artificial environment needed to print something in space, as the layers need to be pressurized for the structure to be intact. Therefore, our system, Nanofacture, would be superior, as the lack of gravity would not affect our electrostatic latches, and all we would need is the catoms themselves and the charging stand. Therefore, Nanofacture is superior to Made in Space. If we move on to an origami arm developed by the Wyss Institute at Harvard and the MIT CSILC, we see that the origami arm uses origami structure and differences in air pressure to be able to lift up to 1,000 times its own weight. However, implementing this system in space would be extremely challenging because it bases it off of air pressure, and air systems are really hard to employ. In addition, it would only be able to move pre-made parts, so putting it on Mars would be like putting 2 rovers at the same time. Therefore, our nanosystems would be able to create parts that are needed on the spot and be able to meet unforeseen circumstances.
So in order to make this a reality, we would need to take 7 crucial steps. One being we need to file a patent for both the design and the program. Second, we would need to apply a research grant to NASA for $1.2 million. And third, we would need to secure the housing and materials and equipment for manufacturing it. And we already found a manufacturing facility in Arizona that meets our needs just right. So fourth, we would need to meet with major aerospace corporations and pitch in our product after we complete our prototype, and land pre-orders. Landing these pre-orders would be the most significant hurdle to overcome through these steps, but we believe this is achievable due to our market analysis. Fifth, we expect a net profit of $463,978 for our first year, which we will reinvest in our business in order to research methods to shrink the size of our nanofactured particles, leading to our final step of shrinking the size of nanofactured particles to 200 nanometers.
We will be making 500 of these units our first year, which are around 2,000 nanometers in size and consist of 2,000 nanofactured particles, and they will be 1 millimeter in size for each particle. So we are asking for an initial investment of $86,021 for a 15% stake in our business. This is after we ourselves have invested $250,000 plus the $1.2 million grant from NASA. Now, our investors will be able to make back their money in 2 years, and then they will make 40 times their profit by our 3rd year. Nanofacture is the way of the future, and we need your help to nanofacture it. We would now love to take any questions, and we will pass out some of our particles as well as demonstrate some of our code.
So currently it's a 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter. Is there a use case for that as yet? Is it just for prototyping?
I'm sorry, repeat the
question. Is there a use case for the current production? Your envisioned production is 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter sphere, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there a use case for that, or is it just simply more to get a prototype going so people can play around with it?
So the millimeter scale would act more like a prototype for the more practical scale product.
Is there anybody making that currently?
There's no one making this product currently. The reason that we have 1 millimeter is because right now the processor that is available on a larger scale, the smallest one, is 1 millimeter in size. But Intel has just recently created a 7 nanometer processor that we will then be using within our final product, which would be the 2000 nanometer size particles.
To add on, Intel's processor, the 7 nanometer processor, would allow us to make our units the size of, well, we hope a sediment of clay, which was our goal, because it has almost the resolution, if you will, for us to have more detailed shapes.
So, so two things. First, Intel 7 nanometer is the size of the interconnects, I think. So it's actually much bigger in real size. But so my memory from your pre-proposal is that this is in part based on an idea of a much larger object that was developed in some academic lab. So could you talk about the patent issues related to the larger and smaller versions of this product and what is already protected?
So the lab that we mentioned in our pre-proposal was Carnegie Mellon, and what they tested was simply the physical prototype of the particles moving around. However, as we mentioned, our code, our trade secret, is using machine learning to allow the particles to be able to reroute themselves and communicate with each other to move around. So our code is really the one that is going to be patented and that we will be selling, similar to how Autodesk Inventor and other 3D programs are being used in the 3D printing industry.
Also note that they do not have a patent on their technology, so we could get there first, if necessary.
So I am risking asking this question because I am not the scientist here. But I saw in your presentation who you were going to contact. I'm assuming SpaceX, Northrop Grumman, they're all NASA, they're all potential clients. And then I see visuals of Mars rovers. So my question is your target market for something that is in a mobile state on Mars? Is it for something that's in orbit with human beings on it? What is your ideal target market between, resident on another planet versus orbiting the Earth?
So our market is essentially anything in space. So as I mentioned earlier, the programs developed being by NASA with their Restore-L mission, or the partnership between Orbiter ATK and US Space for their Vivisat program, such programs are to repair satellites, and they take tools up with them. So they are not necessarily competitors, but they can actually be vessels for our product. By putting Nanofacture on their vessels, they will be able to fix a lot more problems than they currently can with the tools they have. In addition, Ben Reed, Deputy Director of Management with the SSPD of NASA, has confirmed that NASA is looking towards such systems for both satellites in orbit, fixing government satellites, as there are 2,600 satellites in graveyard orbit, and for other complex missions on Mars.
If I may add to what my colleague has said, we also got to meet with the Aerospace Corporation yesterday in order to talk with them about our project and how it can further be built upon in the future. And they too have agreed that this is the way that they are trying to solve these problems, and they really need a technology such as this to input on any unmanned space mission. So that is our key market, is any unmanned spacecraft, be it satellites, rovers, or any other thing that they decide needs to go into space.
How did you guys, it's so interesting, but how did you guys just find this unmet need in this particular field? Was it collaborative, or did you read something? Are you interested in aerospace? And how did this is
So if I may take the question, it first, the solution, well, initially the solution came first, and we kind of looked for a need. And it all started when my hobby is just looking around for new technology articles. And many years ago, I found this article that Carnegie Mellon were developing this sort of concept. They didn't really complete it because they abandoned the project and the website stopped updating, neither did they patent it. But about this future that they imagined, how materials can form as people needed, like transformers, or if you have ever seen Big Hero 6, the microbots in there. So that vision inspired me, and I had it through me my whole middle school life and my high school life, and this was a good opportunity for me to find a need for it.
We have time for one more quick question, if there is one more.
So obviously, look, if you can get this to work, it definitely there's a market. It doesn't even need to be in space, put it that way. Okay, the oil and gas industry would love this. Okay, deep water drilling, all that stuff. It's a big problem. It's a high cost, right? The question is, can it actually work, right? Have you guys looked at the production yield feasibility on this thing yet? Because sometimes a lot of times it works in the lab, and I've seen it many times before. There's Nobel laureates who created really cool, polymers, materials, and whatnot in the lab, but in production, it becomes very problematic. Have you guys looked into the production yield issues? What are the challenges in actually getting to be kind of production scale, manufacturing scale?
Can I take this one? Okay. So we actually have looked into it to a certain degree. So we looked into how processors are made, because those are very similar in their small size, and we saw how much it would take to get the machine. So we've started drafting kind of how the machine would need to run, and that's why our facility was chosen in Arizona, was because it's in a very good region in which they make those microprocessors, which allow us to have that at our disposal as we are manufacturing and figuring out how to do such a huge project.
So something to be critical of is a microprocessor. It's a wafer layers, right? You're doing layers and layers and layers. You have three-dimensionality kind of in here that you generally can't exactly print the same way, right? You have chemical vapor depositions and whatnot, and little etching going on down. And whereas in this case, the production would be fundamentally different from a manufacturing perspective. So something to keep that in mind. Their nanoscales is there, right, in terms of 20 nanometers actually kind of where now they're going lower. But it's really the three-dimensional kind of how you're going to actually manufacture this, right? When you basically have to come up with a new manufacturing process to be able to do this in scale. That's probably where the challenge is going to be.
It definitely will. We've looked into, the reason we also chose ebonite is because it's made they have 1 millimeter sizes as well as around the 2000 nanometer size. So that is the reason we chose that material when it comes to buying in bulk. And that's one of the extents in which we've looked into three-dimensional manufacturing.
All right, thank you guys. All right, so our next company to present is Golden Detection.
Hi, I'm Porvi.
Hi, I'm Tiffany.
I'm Ben.
I'm Adam.
I'm Marcus.
And our product is Golden Detection.
Let's start with some facts. 1.16 trillion is the total annual economic cost of cancer through healthcare expenditure and a loss of productivity in 2010. 90 billion is the amount spent in the U.S. on cancer-related healthcare in 2014. 4 out of every 100 men will die from prostate cancer.
So to solve these problems, we're looking for a simple, affordable, and effective solution. And our solution is Golden Detection. So how is it simple? A test to detect prostate cancer only involves a small prick of blood and a shake of a bottle to yield results, as we'll explain later. How is it affordable? Each kit includes 4 tests, which will last throughout a year, and each kit only costs $20. So this form of detection is not limited to only those who have a lot of money. And how is it effective? Gold nanoparticles coated with NACT PSA will detect recurring prostate cancer, as we'll get into later. If used early enough, we can ensure that patients can get the correct treatment before it's too late.
In 2013, Imperial College
developed a diagnostic test for recurrent prostate cancer. They attached a short peptide chain to the surface of nanoparticles because they're similar structures and chemical groups. When the particle comes in contact with the enzymes related to prostate cancer, the solution turns from blue to red, as shown. Oh, yeah.
The general tests for cancer include the ELISA and the SIRS, which are effective at detecting cancer and looking at it, but at the same time, they're expensive because they require high, costly resources and require medical facilities, so all people cannot access them commonly. And current tests specific to prostate cancer include prostate biopsy, digital rectal examination, and PSA blood tests. And they are all common, but prostate biopsy and DRE are invasive and sometimes ineffective, and PSA are ineffective sometimes because they rely on high level of PSA, which can be altered by physical activities, medications, and also other diseases such as UTI.
So our product is going to come in the form of self-administrative kits, much like a first aid kit, and each kit will include peptide-linked gold nanoparticles, which are basically just gold nanoparticles that are coated with the protein that's specific to the cancer being detected. Also, we will have test tubes, a buffer phosphate solution, and a glucose-style pinprick, which is not shown in the photo, but it will be used to extract the blood from the person. In order to test out our product and to perform the test, the patient will add gold nanoparticles into the test tube, followed by the buffer solution and the blood sample. Then they'll shake the test tube, and depending on the color of the resulting solution, the patient will be able to determine whether or not they have prostate cancer. Currently, our test does run on purified samples with the blood sample, but in the future, we hope to only run our tests on the blood samples. So currently, there are effective products out there, like how we talked about earlier. However, the two major costs that arise from these products are cost and accessibility. Our product tackles both of these issues because our product is actually 87% cheaper than the average prostate biopsy out there and 60 to 70% cheaper than the average PSA test out there. So, and we'll get into our costs later in this presentation, but the cost of our kit is definitely affordable to a wide range of audiences and people all over the world. Going to accessibility, since it is a self-administrative kit that we plan to distribute throughout pharmacies and clinics, it is easy to distribute and a lot of people can have access to it without having healthcare or professional aid. So we plan to tackle our solutions by first hiring researchers to further the specificity of the experimental method. Then we want to go through clinical trials. And then finally, we want to get it FDA approved and then possibly advertise it to the public.
So as I mentioned earlier, for each kit will cost $20, and it provides 4 tests, which we expect to last one for an entire year. And each kit costs about $5 to make. So we expect our startup cost, including the production of 100,000 kits, will be around $1.5 million, which we expect to go down. And here are the total costs, the most important being the nanoparticles, which cost 30 cents.
Our goal for the future will be to expand beyond prostate cancer to other cancers.
Thank you.
So for the evaluation of your diagnostic, it just detects whether or not, yes or no, prostate cancer, correct?
Right.
So biopsies obviously can detect severity, location, and a variety of other system issues or systemic issues. So it's not a one-to-one comparison. So as far as other diagnostics, is there any other at-home or point-of-care diagnostic for any type of cancer?
So we didn't really go into that because our main goal was to prevent late detection. So we wanted to really have this test at home that consumers can use to, detect cancer without having access to like healthcare or, having that access to going to a hospital and talking with medical professionals. So we didn't really go into what would happen with like the severity of the cancer and other types. We just wanted to focus solely on like the detection of it, so then these consumers can then seek further aid.
So you said that currently everything's been done with purified samples, but that your goal was to do this as an at-home thing. It's my understanding that cross false positives from the other components of blood is the reason that these kinds of tests are not currently available, because the technology of bringing nanoparticles together is now pretty established. So what is your plan to make it so that it could be used without that purification?
So we mentioned that we wanted to hire some researchers and people working in the lab to help us with that, because we didn't really, go into detail about how to, I guess, fully rely solely on the blood samples. Right now, we just know that using the proteins and the phosphate buffer solution with the blood will allow it to detect it, but we didn't really go into detail with just how it would work with blood.
I'd like to ask you a question about what happens after the person does the test. So you're talking about a very serious illness. I take it that this result comes back more along the lines of the timeline of a pregnancy test. Is that correct?
Right.
So can you comment on the psychology of getting a diagnosis while you're perhaps sitting alone in your home, and how you're going to address the person in the moment when they get this diagnosis? I'd really like you to address that.
So we're assuming when the consumer goes and buys the test, they're doing it with, they know what they're getting into, and they have the proper support group and their family with them. So we're assuming that they're doing this at their own risk, and they know what's basically coming ahead. So we didn't, I mean, obviously at a hospital you have the comfort of the doctors and their specialization and their knowledge, but we're assuming that the consumers know what's going to happen.
Also, if I could expand on that, it's better to know before it's too late than to find out after it's a terminal illness that you can't cure. So.
I have a question. It's four times a year. You have a test in your packet. You can do 4 tests a year. How often do men get tested for prostate cancer? Is it 4 times a year? I don't know.
It's usually once a year.
It's usually once a year.
Yeah.
Right.
So
like why do you think that people will find that beneficial if it's for 4 tests a year?
Right. So we thought that having 4 tests would make it more, I guess, affordable, because it will, when we say 4 tests a year, it doesn't have to be like in a year. It could be that they're, using it throughout a period of 4 years. It's not just
It'll last, what's the shelf life?
Yeah, that's the thing we didn't really get into, but since right now our solution is liquid, we're planning on making it into a solidified solution so that it has a longer shelf life, but we didn't really get into the specifics of like how long it is.
There's one more question.
So the idea of using color change in gold nanoparticles is established in the scientific literature. So I assume there's a whole bunch of patents on this already. So how would you negotiate the patents that are already out there, and how would you get licenses to make another product based on that overarching technology?
So we thought we could do that because a lot of the patents and the products that are using this technology are used in, they're not really administered the way that we want to do it over the counter and like a pharmacy or a clinic. A lot of those tests are done in labs or at hospitals, and we want to bring it back home. So we're hoping that the accessibility of our product and the way it's being administered is what's going to be making us different than what's currently there.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right, so our next company is Silac-er, or Silac-er. Silac-er. Silac-er, I'll say that.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Finkel.
Brittany Barrios.
Jasmine Stakely.
Cameron Rhiness.
Ava Walker. And this is silver nanoparticles to cure yeast infections.
So what is a yeast infection? Well, it's the overgrowth of yeast cells in the vagina. It causes itching, swelling, and irritation. And while it's not lethal, it can be very uncomfortable. And if it's left untreated, it can spread to the fallopian tubes, and in a long-term situation can cause fertility problems. So 75% of all women will get a yeast infection in their lifetime. And this risk increases for women who are pregnant, have diabetes, or are taking antibiotics. Women who are pregnant have a higher risk because they have higher estrogen levels. Women who have diabetes have a higher risk because there's an increase of sugar in the mucous membranes. And women who take antibiotics, the antibiotics can kill the bacteria that keeps the yeast balanced. So we want to propose a more effective and more safe yeast infection medication.
So in our product, there is 0.02 moles of silver nanoparticles. Silver nanoparticles are a heat solution of sodium citrate and silver nitrate in water until the substance turns slightly yellow and both particles have dissolved. In this diagram over here, you can see we used in class, we would put all three solutions into a beaker and heat it on a hot plate until it would turn slightly yellow. So we also added 8 milliliters of yogurt and 2 milliliters of honey to create the cream form of our medication, as well as add probiotics to the medication to help the Lactobacillus acidophilus help balance the yeast. So silver nanoparticles enter yeast cells through endocytosis. The citrate ions around the silver nitrate help disguise the silver nanoparticles and help deceive the yeast into intaking it through endocytosis, which it usually does to intake sugar to survive. So this creates an effective way of killing the yeast cells more fast.
So our product will come with a cream-filled syringe and a panty liner. The application process is pretty simple. So as you can see, the user would, before bed, lay on their back and inject the cream into the vagina. Then they would remain on their back for 2 to 3 minutes. And during this time, they would be wearing a panty liner should any of the cream spill out. And afterwards, in the next morning, they would wash it off. And if the infection persists, they would be advised to see a doctor.
So why is our product better? Well, common products on the market can lead to stinging, swelling, irritation, tenderness, and itching. Our product is also better because women with yeast infection don't need a doctor's prescription to go and get the medication. It's on the shelf and it has easy access to get to. It's also more natural because of the yogurt and the honey, which are home remedies, and it mixes with the silver nanoparticles to make the medication more effective.
So it will take 4 to 6 years and 4 major steps to get our product on the market. For the first 2 months, we plan to develop and test the cream on yeast cultures grown in a laboratory. Then the next 3 to 12 months, we will begin toxicity lab on animals. And years 2 to 3, we will, if the animal trials are successful, then we will apply for FDA approval and start phase 1 and 2, which are testing on people without yeast infections, and then a small clinical trial of people with yeast infections. Finally, for year 4 to 6, we will finish and establish phase 3 and 4, which will be testing on pregnant, diabetic women and people who take antibiotics in a larger scale to have statistics. Then phase 3 and phase 4, which are advertising and manufacturing and distribution. Thank you.
So as far as the curative rate for this solution over existing solutions, is there what's the difference between your approach and current treatments?
Okay, so we looked at many other medications on the market right now, and most medications take 3 days or 7 days, depending on the effectiveness of the medication. Our medication is more of an overnight medication. It's more fast because of the silver nanoparticles, and we did test this in our own classroom where we had yeast, and we made the silver nanoparticles, and we tried to see if the silver nanoparticles would kill it. Then we would leave it overnight and see if we could revive it the next day. And if it would to revive, we would test again to see if the silver nanoparticles were still effective. So the next day we came back, we gave sugar to the yeast to see if it would revive itself, come back to life. But the silver nanoparticles wouldn't let it, so it just let it stay dead.
I think you might have been, I don't know if you mentioned the patent, if you're going after a patent or this is a novel approach in terms of kind of the silver nanoparticle. Is it novel? Is there something already available in the market that's being utilized in a different way, or?
Current yeast infection medications don't use silver nanoparticles, so this would be a new method. And based on our testing, it did seem more effective. Obviously, we still have to go through all the tests we mentioned, but it is a new kind of medication.
But is it being utilized in any other way? It's just a different. Is this a different application of a existing technology?
No, nobody uses silver nanoparticles to treat yeast infections at the moment that we know of. But the whole point is that pregnant women and diabetic women can use it, and it can work because pregnant women can't usually. They have to go get a prescription to get yeast infection medication. That's kind of a hassle, whereas this you can just buy in the store.
And production-wise, you guys have looked at production capability, manufacturing capability. Is there a problem with yields, or is it how difficult is it to manufacture?
I'm sorry.
Sorry. Is there any issues that you could foresee in manufacturing in mass scale?
Not well. It will probably have not a very long shelf time because of the yogurt in it, and it will need to be refrigerated. Those are the main problems we have with manufacturing. But
as for the silver nanoparticles, we were able to make that in our classroom, so that shows that it could be something that could be easily made.
Yeah.
So in terms of silver nanoparticle products, there are a lot of them. So there's Band-Aids and there's sports socks and all sorts of things that use silver nanoparticles to kill microbes in a different way. You know, whatever stinky sock microbes are, those are actually mostly, I don't know if there's a bacteria or yeast. But the question is, what patents exist for silver nanoparticle antimicrobials, or is it so common that it's not patentable, and so it's an open area for you to develop into a new product?
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to get back to you on that.
So the other question is, so the reason that pregnant women can't use the conventional medicines for yeast infections, most of them are over the counter, but they're just not recommended for pregnancy because they could be toxic to the baby. So are silver nanoparticles toxic to babies?
Okay, so we looked at many researches, and we found one that talked about the toxicity of silver nanoparticles. As long as there is less than 0.1 moles, silver nanoparticles are not found toxic to the human body. So that's why we have 0.02 moles to maximize effectiveness but minimize toxicity to the human body, as well as the baby carrying inside.
All right, well, thank you guys. All right, so company 10 is a skin regeneration ointment.
Skin Regeneration Ointment by
Darwin Hernandez.
Cassandra Soriano.
Edwin George.
Chelsea Triplet.
and Marlene Granados. Current treatment of bed sores involve use of foam pads or pillows to take pressure off the sore. Patients are advised to sit upright and straight when sitting in a chair or wheelchair. Patients are also advised to improve their nutrition to help the sore heal and maintain good hygiene. Antibiotics can be given through a small needle inserted to a vein or by mouth to treat bacterial infection caused by bed sores. However, these treatments are often often these treatments are not enough to cure chronic non-healing wounds. As bed sores, some wounds become so infected that amputation is required. Our product DCKEM Revitalizing Cream will provide relief for those who have chronic non-healing wounds. DCKEM Revitalizing Cream will decrease the time needed for skin regeneration, which could be beneficial to an older audience due to skin regeneration abilities decreasing with advancement of age. But our cream can be used for all ages.
Our product increases the rate at which the skin cells regenerate using a protein called PDGF, or platelet-derived growth factor, and the PDFG is linked to a gold non-reactive nanoparticle using a polyglycinic linker. The nanoparticle increases the half-life of the protein and the wound while also causing the ointment to have increased shelf life while in packaging.
So our product will mainly consist of it being a targeted drug delivery. What that means is that it will contain the PDGF, the gold nanoparticles, and the polyglycin. The gold nanoparticles were chosen because they're relatively non-reactive, and they're also cheaper than other nanoparticles when they're compared to. The PDGF will be used as a protein which will help the gold nanoparticles travel to the wound to the skin. However, we need something to link them together, which we will use the polyglycin. That will help link the gold nanoparticles and the PDGF together so that it could travel through the skin to the wound. The nanoparticle is also key because it helps the controlled time release of the PDGF, and it will help the pace of skin regeneration go much faster and also increase blood vessels.
Here we have put together a list of 4 different competitors, and the first one is, all 4 of them are Emuade, Iodorsib, Purical Wound Dressing, and Medihoney. Between all 4 of these, the most cons are that they don't protect the wound side, or they can't be used for 3rd-degree burns, or they can cause an infection predominantly. Our revitalizing cream can be used, it's made with nanoparticles and protein to regenerate skin faster. Our product is better because it can treat severe to moderate wounds, and it promotes blood vessel growth.
Over the course of 5 years, we would need a total estimate of $11,937,275. We would need this much money because we need it for clinical trials, marketing, manufacturing, and many more items. We would start our clinical trials in 2019 and through 2022. Throughout this time, we will be able to test our product and test its efficiency. By 2023, we will have a final product and begin mass production. By 2024, we will evolve our product so that it will be able to apply to many other patients, like people with burn injuries.
Thank you. May we answer any questions you have?
go back to slide number 6? You're not, oops, sorry. Yeah, there you go. You're not giving anyone raises? Right? Is that what you decided to do?
Yeah.
Yeah? How do you feel about that? I guess I made my point.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will ask all the science questions. Okay, so the first, there's 2 questions. One is, you listed a number of other products, but you didn't talk about what is their method of wound healing. So your idea is to use this growth factor to try to promote cell growth and then to use nanoparticles to keep it around longer. But is that employed in any of those other products? And also, most of those other products included an antimicrobial. And do you have an antimicrobial in your product?
Yes, we do have an antimicrobial. Most of the other creams. Wait, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So all of these creams, if you look at what they say, is mostly they're some kind of an antimicrobial thing. But you didn't really say, I don't know what else is in them. So I don't know how to compare your product to these other products. You didn't teach me quite enough about these products that I can understand how your product compares. But the one thing I can see is that almost all of these have an antimicrobial, and you didn't mention that for your product. So it's a 2-part question. One is, what technology are they using and how is it different from yours? And the other is, do you have an antimicrobial, and if so, what is it?
I'm sorry, we're going to have to come back to that one.
So when it comes to wound healing, there's a couple components. One is closing the wound, and the other is producing functional skin. So a lot of times with scar tissue or burns, you have severe scarring, which obviously leads to easy tear of skin, things like that. So does your technology not only promote the wound closing component, but also functional tissue regrowth?
Yes, it would create skin that would be functional because as the skin would be regrowing, it would be regenerating at a much faster pace that will create skin that could be functional and would grow to close the wound that essentially has been causing the patient a lot of pain and that usually don't have a lot of effective cures, such as surgeries that aren't really successful or that could cause pain when they're in recovery.
What drew you to this? Did anyone have a parent that had bed sore or grandparent or anyone they knew? This is an important topic.
Yeah, my grandfather, he passed away due to an infection on the bed sores.
So is there, you brushed over the shelf life. What would the shelf life be? So if it's used in a nursing home setting where they go through product really fast, but if it's in a home, they might not go through the product as fast. So what's your shelf life if it is sold over the counter?
Shelf life can be about a year, and over a year, we don't recommend you to continue to use it because
its effectiveness will not be as high, as it will not be able to heal you as well, and may cause some side effects.
Have you guys looked at the total market size for just this specific with bed sores and whatnot? What's the total market?
The total market?
Yeah.
Over 5 years, we would need 11,937,000.
That's more the funding, but what is your total addressable market? What's the revenue you expect to be able to generate?
100,000.
Let me ask it another way. How much of this do you plan to sell? And how much of the total market
do you think you will have based on how much you will sell?
We plan on selling this to hospitals primarily because hospitals have a lot of patients that are recovering throughout these wounds, and they contain a lot of patients because 400,000 people get around bed sores that usually cannot be cured. So we plan that we will be able to receive a lot of the marketing because the other cures, as mentioned before, aren't really as effective or can create really painful recovery times for many people, and it wouldn't be as effective, which could also lead to even death.
So is PDGF safe? I mean, if it makes cells grow, that's good, but like when cells grow too much, that's cancer? So do you know if it can be used safely in this way?
So far, it has reached up to clinical phase 3 and 4 and has been showing signs that it has been not producing too much or too little cells, so it's producing enough cells for the wounds to close and for it to function properly.
So there are products that are based on this?
Not a lot, but not really.
So the clinical trials are on just the compound itself?
They're researching how PDGF is able to regenerate skin.
All right, unless we have one very brief question, then I guess we'll move on. So thank you guys. All right, so last but certainly not least is carbon. It's our last company.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Sydney.
I'm Molly.
I'm Riley.
I'm Kiana.
And I'm Evan. And our product is the carbon nanofilter. By show of hands, who drove here today? Interesting. So all of you guys contribute to the rising levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere.
So carbon dioxide is currently a very prominent issue in today's environment, as it accounted for 82% of all greenhouse gases in 2015. And 32% of those emissions came just from transportation. So this level of CO2 causes a major problem within the atmosphere, as it can contribute to climate change, as well as cost the global economy up to $45 trillion by 2050. So our solution is the carbon nanofilter. So our proposal is to use a recycled paper waste cellulose aerogel to capture the carbon from the exhaust before it's even emitted into the atmosphere. Our filter would be able to capture and store carbon waste as well as biodegrade back into the soil to benefit the environment further. It would also benefit the consumer because they would be able to, like in heavily populated suburban cities such as the one that we live in, it's very difficult to maintain gardens or grass because the state of the soil isn't very good. So it would benefit the consumer by allowing them to both feel good about reducing the amount of carbon they're emitting into the atmosphere, but also help increase the nutrients in their own backyard. So the filter itself would be made using recycled paper waste, which would help reduce the amount of paper waste within landfills, and we would use that to create an aerogel. And within the aerogel, we would embed a nitrogen-doped copper metal organic framework to increase the storage capacity and increase the selectivity of what gases are captured.
The filter is encased inside of the exhaust pipe. As the gases flow through, the carbon dioxide is attracted inside of the sides of the tailpipe. Due to the nitrogen-doped carbon metal organic framework.
The base component for the filter is a cellulose aerogel made from recycled paper waste. An aerogel is formed through the process of cross-linking and is categorized as a self-assembling material. The carbon waste flows through the tailpipe and is absorbed into the helices formed by the cross-linking monomers.
One competitor this product foresees is the CO tube created by Vanderbilt University. This product is not biodegradable and requires maintenance. On top of that, this product did not receive the proper funding due to the lack of investments. Their product was planning to be sold to online car owners themselves, whereas our product would be sold to the car manufacturers instead. This product would be marketed towards hybrid car manufacturers as an added bonus to promote the car's environmental capability. When the car is running off of the power provided by the internal combustion engine, the filter would do its job and filter out the carbon before it is released into the atmosphere. The cost of this filter would be added to the cost of the total car cost before being sold to the dealership, and the dealership would do the same and sell it to their customers with the filter included.
Our market would primarily be the eco-friendly and hybrid car manufacturers. The product we would use would the trickle-down strategy into the everyday vehicles as the production decreases. We would start with this narrow market, and then we would, as the availability in materials and technology increased, then we would distribute more on a wide scale. We kind of have the similar strategy to what the rear view cameras, where they start on luxury vehicles and then trickle to almost every vehicle.
It costs an estimated total of $57,600 to rent lab space for a year. In order to collect paper waste, we plan on obtaining a permit for $300 annually. The main machinery needed to build the filters costs an estimated total of $20,000, and the material to build 400 filters as a start estimates to a total of $14,010. This comes to a total of $91,910, but we would request $100,000 from investors to account for margin error in the startup.
Our first year of the startup, we would like to do further testing on the biodegradability, and we'd also like to attain a permit. And then as the years go on, we want to finalize and test in a more practical, and then distribute to all the cars.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'll start. Paper's flammable. Exhaust is hot.
Yeah.
Expand.
Okay. So our original idea, we started off, we came up with the idea to use a hydrogel to reduce the carbon waste from the exhaust pipe, but then we realized very quickly that that would not be feasible because it's liquid-based and that would evaporate due to the temperatures of the exhaust pipe. There has already been studies with cellulose aerogels, which is using plant-based materials to create the fibers that promote absorption. So the cellulose fibers are not necessarily flammable in the structure of the aerogel because it's not paper waste. It's the cellulose fibers derived from paper waste.
My next question before I pass it on is what's the life cycle for the filter? Does it need to be replaced? How long would it last? And how would it be replaced?
So we expect that the filter would last probably around 6 months, 4 to 6 months, and the driver of the car would be able to go in for an oil check, and they would replace the filter at the same time. And during that check, they would take the filter out for the consumer and then give it back to them so that they could reuse it in their garden.
Okay, so I have a whole bunch of science questions. So cellulose does burn, but I don't know the flammability point, and I don't know how hot a tailpipe is, so that may be okay. But my bigger question relates to carbon dioxide absorption. So as far as I know, cellulose is not a great carbon dioxide absorber. The moth that you talked about are better carbon dioxide absorbers, but usually they only work well at low temperature. So what kind of absorption do you expect at high temperature? And then, assuming that they will actually hold on to carbon dioxide at high temperature, then what is the biodegrading pathway? Like, where does that carbon dioxide eventually go when it starts to degrade? Is it just released back into the atmosphere, or how does it end up sequestered?
So we read an article about, a scientific article about how nitrogen doping, the copper metal organic framework, would attract carbon specifically to the filter. And so we planned on nitrogen doping the framework to promote carbon absorption and then trap it within the framework. And then in relation to the biodegradability question, we plan on, the ideal situation would be to bury the filter in the garden so that the carbon would be released into the soil instead of letting it sit on top of the soil. So it would not be released into the air, but rather into the dirt.
So, sorry, I'll let other people ask, but just, did you have anything about the temperature where you can absorb carbon dioxide? Like what temperature it absorbs and what temperature it releases?
Mm-hmm. So we looked into temperature, but we focused more on the sustainability of the aerogel within the exhaust pipe, and we found that the aerogel would sustain in the exhaust pipe, but we did not look into carbon dioxide capture at certain temperatures yet.
What is the actual cost to the manufacturer? We calculated that each filter would cost around $65.75 due to the amount of material in the filter and production costs, because each filter only has about $35 worth of material. Cost or your selling price?
That would be our selling price, because each filter would only cost to make about $45.
Okay, and they're just selling type for the manufacturer, and the manufacturer is going to have to probably sell that to the consumer at some point.
Yes.
Right. So have you guys looked into how much this would impact the oil change cost, for example? What's the average oil change cost? Is it going to double it? Is it going to increase it by 50%? Have you guys looked into that?
No, we have not yet.
Well, okay, so basically what we're kind of doing is we want to sell our product to the manufacturers so they already have it within the car. And then when they go, the consumer goes with the filter already in their car, and then they go to get their oil change, just kind of like take it out and give it to them. So they're not necessarily doing a lot. And since the car manufacturers already have the product that they bought from us, it wouldn't necessarily alter the price significantly. So.
Well, it's usually the aftermarket service, right? Oil change can be done at a dealership or at Jiffy Lube, for example, right? And they're in there to make a margin at retail, right? They're not going to give it away for free. It's most, besides BMW and some of the other higher end, doesn't include service for the first 3 years, right? So every 6 months, depending also on how much you drive, you may or may not go every 6 months. And if your thing only lasts, is it by number of miles you're driving, or is it by degradation associated with time?
We looked into miles driven averagely, on average, and how, like, time as well. We looked into both, and we came up with 6 months ideally, but we are not sure because we haven't tested in a real-life situation.
I would look into how it would impact the total cost of ownership now for a consumer, for the end consumer of this, because if it really increased the total cost of ownership significantly, then you'll have to relook at kind of unit economics, right? There.
I have a question about your initial target, and that, I think I'm recalling correctly, that it was for hybrid owners. So have you thought about the guilt factor of marketing to non-hybrid owners? And perhaps that's an interesting initial target market, because you could play the guilt trip factor on them. So you don't have a hybrid car, but we can make it kind of work like a hybrid car.
Right.
So I'd be interested in hearing why you picked a hybrid as your initial target.
We chose hybrid cars because the customers who buy in the hybrid cars want an environmental, they want to be environmentally friendly, so they buy the car to be environmentally friendly. So that's kind of the aspect. And I don't think guilt would make somebody buy a car.
Ideally, we targeted hybrid cars as well. Ideally, we targeted hybrid cars as well, because the consumer would be willing to pay a little bit extra to benefit the environment, because as mentioned before, it would be an added cost. It would increase the price of the car, and that would be a selling point for us.
Do you perceive that there would be governmental regulations on it? Because state to state, there's environmental impact. And, you know, when you take your car in to get tested, smog tested, if there's any alteration to your car, they call you on it. And so how would you address that? Would you do that discovery first before you went to the manufacturers to make it sure it's all clear?
Oh, yes. We would definitely test environmental impact before we marketed it. And we'd want to make sure that it was approved where we did market it so that it wouldn't cause backlash.
And on a presentation, great job, but I want to know what drew you to this and how did you split up the interests?
So like primarily we all drive cars and we wanted to we were really focusing on doing something environmentally friendly because that's something that's a huge problem now. And we did research and we actually found that people are starting to look into filters towards production like factories. So we thought that since cars actually contribute to a lot of the problems, then it would be something that would really benefit, especially since everyone uses cars.
So you've got time for one more quick question if there is one. And then otherwise, thank you very much. All right, so that concludes our pitch session for today. So before everyone gets up and heads out, just a few announcements. First of all, I want to have every group get one more round of applause. Because I'm sure, as you can all see right now, this kind of stuff is not easy. Pitching is a really, really challenging thing at any level, anytime, anywhere. So good job to everyone for doing the job that you did. So very nice. As far as announcements go, so for those of you who are watching on the live streaming, this is actually the end of the live streaming portion. So we will be posting announcements about the winners of the competition on our website and our Facebook page. So if you're interested in knowing who won, come back around 2-ish p.m. and we'll be posting that information if you don't hear about it from your loved ones already. And then the last announcements is just that we have a lovely lunch for you guys to enjoy. We also have a photo booth, so if you guys want to relax, take some fun photos, we've got that available to you. And for the judges, we have lunch ready for you guys in the executive conference room to begin your tallying and discussing. So thank you all so much.